This is Kevin Pruitt with another episode of Rising Tide Startups. And my guest tonight is the inimitable Captain Jim Palmer. Jim, thanks for joining us on Rising Tide.
Oh, my pleasure. And of course, we're doing this at night, so you can't see the sun because it's almost dark outside. The lighting's a little weird inside the boat at night, so hopefully it's okay.
Yeah, I did ask him off air. I said, man, aren't you supposed to be topside? And he said, man, it's dark. He said,
Well, it's dark and cold. This is one of those days when it's cold in Florida, which I think tomorrow will be better.
Yeah,
but yeah,
exactly.
My Captain Jim videos usually take place in the captain's chair, which is like right up above me, but not tonight.
And I do encourage you guys to check those out on Facebook and YouTube and other places that they're going to pop up because they're great videos. But Jim, if you don't mind, tell our audience a little bit about yourself.
So I lost my job in 2001, and having 4 teenagers at home, even though I had an entrepreneurial itch that I knew eventually would be scratched, I thought, no, I got to go back and get another salaried gig, and but God had other plans for me, and basically went through almost a year and a half of unemployment, which took my once healthy ego and really brought it down. He kind of, I think, in a way, I sometimes describe it as God's boot camp. When they take a Marine, they bring you all the way down and rebuild you. God was rebuilding me. I probably had a little bit too much focus on things, and 1 year into my about 16 months of unemployment, depending when I started my business, I got cancer. So I was really, really at a very low place, Kevin. And it was so low, I got on my knees and I just prayed for guidance. But instead of actually like a half-hearted prayer about, Lord, I really need a job, can you help me find a job? I said, all right, I'm clearly making a mess of this. What do you want? Tell me what you want me to do and I'll do it, turn my life over. And I really got such a clear signal. It almost startled me. It was so clear that I was to become an entrepreneur. So I started my first business. I'm going to try and give you the short version. Started my first business in October 2001. I became the founder and president, CEO, and chief muckety muck of my own corporation called Dynamic Communication. And here I thought I'm on the right path. Well, I went a full 12 months of being the president of Dynamic Communication, but the one problem is I had no income. It took me a year to get my first client. So I described that, Kevin, as being revenue free. I owned my own business, but I was revenue
free zone. There you go.
So I actually, I was talking with a good friend of mine. God just appreciates and rewards hard work. So I figured, what can I do? Because I really need to sell, meet with prospective clients, and do everything I'm going to do. So I got a job at the local Target. I went from being, an executive, a marketing executive, to now stocking shelves at the local Target. But the thing is, I got up at 4 a.m. and worked, I don't know if that's the second or third shift or whatever it is, then I left about 11:30 and then went home, had a quick lunch, and then I went out and sold and made calls. I started doing everything I could to build my business. Eventually, a year later, I got my first client, and then second, third, and fourth. And I started cutting my hours back, and eventually Target said, you're either working here or you're, doing your own thing. Well, that was an easy choice. But once again, I was right back in the fire because I wasn't making enough to quit, but that was the impetus. And I grew my first business to multiple 6 figures, but then I kind of topped out, Kevin. I was really a small business owner, chief cook and bottle washer.
Yep.
And around that time, I met another friend of mine who's a Christian, and he said, have you ever heard of Dan Kennedy? And introduced me to, kind of the GKIC world. And Dan Kennedy is a very, very big mentor of mine. And I started learning about what the different mindset is from an entrepreneur to a small business owner. And I shifted, and I then went on to create No Hassle Newsletters, which was an online newsletter service that grew to over 1,200 customers in 9 countries. I started Concierge Print and Mail on Demand, Custom Article Generator, Success Advantage Publishing. I published 12 different books, and a couple other things, but you get the idea. And I obviously let Dynamic Communication go. And then about 2009 or 10 timeframe, I'm going to a lot of different conferences, meeting with other entrepreneurs, and they're like, how are you doing this? You got all these different things going. And that's when I started my dream business, Mastermind. So I started working with and coaching other entrepreneurs. And about 6 years ago, a friend convinced me to do my own seminar, my own 3-day seminar, which to be honest with you, that was so outside of my comfort zone, Kevin. And I'm like, I don't know if I can do this. And I was probably praying 24/7 leading up to it. In fact, the day we were starting, people are coming in the room and I'm all excited. I got a big smile on my face, but I was like nervous beyond belief. What I got to teach for 3 days. What if by 10:30 on the first day I run out of content? I mean, I was like, but something magical happened. I stepped into the uncomfortableness, if that's a good word, of what I felt God really wanted me to do. And people were just reacting and I could see them writing and digging it. I started sharing some of my personal journey, a little bit what I shared with you earlier about the
Mm.
cancer and employment. I had massive debt from, keeping my mortgage paid and borrowing. And I could see there was two gentlemen that actually had tears in their eyes and told me on a break later on, thank you for being honest and transparent because I'm kind of right where you used to be, right? And so anyway, I really just stayed true to what I felt was my true calling, but I would never have figured that out had I not gone through the fire or what I now call my personal season of
Right.
crisis.
Right. So walk us, I mean, I hate to just kind of, gloss over that. And, that I really appreciate you kind of really laying a very solid foundation about, how you've kind of walked through this. But tell us a little bit about the whole idea of, being virtually at the bottom mentally and psychologically. And then, how you just, I mean, there had to be times where I just can't even drag myself out of bed,
There were
type
times like
thing.
that,
So,
when I saw my neighbors kind of going to work and then, my wife Stephanie got a full-time job. Everybody's going to work. The kids went to school and there I am. And I'm like, this is back in the day. I mean, I think Monster was around. There's very kind of new online job boards. I would go to the local newsstand and buy papers from all over the place. I was changing my resume, kind of downplaying it because
yeah.
maybe I could get a job and work my way back up. I was doing all these different things. And hindsight is 2020. I know now that's not what God had in mind. And so
Mm.
everything I went for, I've we're down in Florida, and down here there's a company called Pinch a Penny, which is they sell pool supplies. I applied at Pinch a Penny. They flew me down here, and I applied for a job. I didn't get it. I was horribly disappointed, but it was all building to what I'm doing now.
Yeah.
And it's pretty crazy that I actually I forgot where I was going with this. I forgot the question you asked me, but it was really everything happens for a reason. You know that, right? I'm preaching to the choir a little bit, but everything happens for a reason. And I think that's really what makes me a great business coach today, Kevin, is nobody that I'm working with and I'm pushing and trying to get them outside their comfort zone because I say that's where the brilliance happens. That's where you're going to really figure out what you're capable of. It's because I had to do that myself. And I worked with people who challenged me. I mean, one of the things I mentioned 12 books. I've written 7 paperbacks and I've got 5 Kindle books for 7. But one of the things that happens when you become an author is people want you to come speak to their groups. Well, I had a massive fear from the time I was a kid until I fixed it of public speaking. I mean,
Hmm.
it really hindered me in school and everything. And but I wrote my first book and I started getting all these invitations. Hey, come talk to us about newsletters and retention-based marketing and stuff like that. And I'm like, hey, thanks for the offer. I'm really busy. I'm traveling. I lied through my teeth because I didn't want to say no. I'm not going to come speak to your group because I'm really afraid. But that was really, and I know I'm not making any huge declarations because remember Seinfeld, most people would rather be in the coffin than delivering the eulogy. It's a very common fear. But I had to get real with myself about if I'm going to really grow a business as big as I want to have to create the lifestyle that I want, I have to lick this. And I did all these different things from speaking courses, Dale Carnegie. I went to a professional hypnotist. I did all these different things. Well, Kevin, it turns out I'm a really good
Mm.
speaker. And so,
Yeah.
but every time I felt that I've been challenged in business, there's always been a way to get past that challenge. And so anyway, I hope that answered your question.
Absolutely. I mean, it kind of created a little bit of a segue to my next question, just kind of adds on to that is the whole idea of, so, so once you kind of, got over that initial hump,
Hmm.
and you may have touched on it earlier, what was the key kind of impetus for kicking you to the next level, where
Um,
you went from and I mean, you listed like 6 different businesses that you were running virtually at the same
yeah.
time. So, it sounded like to me you just created a bunch more jobs for yourself.
Well, I call it the ultra. What is it? The incentive when you're trying to do something. The word escapes me. Here we are on a video interview, but when you're looking for the courage to do something, most people, and I'm going to speak to entrepreneurs now. Let's just say we have some business owners. When you are the head of the company, you own the business. If you don't want to do something, like initially, I didn't want to go out and be a public speaker. Well, I didn't have anybody at the floor above me, or
Yeah.
there wasn't anybody down the hall that was going to call me to task. I could rationalize away my own shortcomings, if that makes sense. Well, what happened is about that time, I have two older boys and twin girls. You know, one of my twin
Hmm.
girls, Jessica.
Hmm.
And about that time, they were really starting to apply for colleges and things like that. And I'd always assumed that my wife Stephanie and I would help the girls with college. And we were in such bad financial shape at that time, it just wasn't going to be possible unless we just went further into debt. And there was a turning point when I said, I'm okay. If I want to have a business that does X, I'm okay with that because I'll figure out a way to live with X. But until I realized my shortcomings and my not stepping up into something much larger that I was capable of was affecting my kids, people that are
Mm.
obviously I love and near and dear to me. I have to fix that. And so that was, oh, I know what it is. I call it extreme motivation. It just bounced into my head. Extreme
Right.
motivation is people will do things, I believe, more for someone else or a cause or somebody other than themselves. You know, if you have a real busy week and it's Friday, it's 5 o'clock, 6 o'clock, and you go to hit your couch and you order a pepperoni pizza and you're gonna just chill, right? And then you get an opportunity to do an interview with Kevin Pruitt. You say, no, I'm busy, Kevin, call me in a month. Or somebody calls you, said, hey Jim, like a friend, you know, I got to get my mom out of this place or whatever, or my mom, you know, something that's, you really need to step up and help your buddy or a friend or whatever. You're going to find the wherewithal to do that. So you'll do things for other people more than you'll do them for yourself.
Mm.
So that was
Yeah.
really, I'll tell you that, Kevin, that was one of the major turning points in my career is when I launched and I kind of really latched on to extreme motivation, and that just helped me grow. And we started accomplishing some really cool things, and I grew some really successful businesses, paid off all our debts, and I tell you that was really cool. But so it was really, that was one of the major turning points for me when I went from doing okay but still struggling to wow, we really started growing.
I don't want to put Stephanie on the spot here, but kind of walk me through the, the whole idea of this is my wife's kind of psyche as I'm going through this. I mean, tell me what it was like when you were like in debt and you kept coming to her and say, hey, okay, I'm going to try this. I think this is going to work. I mean, how many times did you have those conversations? And did she get to the point that she was thinking, I've almost stopped believing you?
Well, I don't think she ever said that.
Yeah.
But I mean, when I lost my job, she immediately went to work. She covered our health insurance. It really took her career in early childhood development to the next level. She
Hmm.
had an amazing career that really blossomed once I lost my job.
Yeah.
So there was that.
Out of
Um,
necessity, maybe as much as anything.
That's right. And I mean, obviously supported. She still reminds me to this day when I thought whatever that date was that I discovered, not that I discovered it, but internet marketing. And she reminds me often, oh, Jim said, you know, hey, I discovered internet marketing. You're going to be able to quit your job and retire in 6 months or something like that. Well, that was more like 6 years or long, way
Yeah.
even longer than
Yeah.
that. Because there is no like, you know, easy magic button. But she's just been so supportive of me, and you know, my greatest cheerleader and pushing me on. But that's really what brought us to where we are today. I mean,
Mm.
she worked so hard at her career. There was a point where she really started to feel burned out from all the growth, and she ran a really large daycare center that was sold and became part of this kind of conglomerate. And so bureaucracy took over where her greatest passion is children.
Hmm.
And she went from being a, you know, an educator and working with children to being like an administrator and just all the stuff the state and everybody put you through. So that was really what led to her leaving her position. which led to us moving on the boat because
Yep.
I can do my job anywhere I got good
Sure.
Wi-Fi, and so
It adds to the
that was the
captain
turning
motif,
point.
too. So it's you
Yeah,
can't be a captain without a boat. I mean,
that's
you just got
right.
to do that. So, I mean,
Yep.
that's so your extreme motivation could have been her. I mean, her extreme motivation may have been those grandkids, that you you
Well, that was
get to
before
enjoy them.
grandkids because
Yeah.
when extreme motivation came in, it was really when my girls wanted to go to college,
Mm,
and we were doing okay. I mean, I had my business and we were doing things. We were no longer like slipping further into debt, other
right.
than when I was doing things to grow my business. But as there's the business and the personal. On the personal side, we were okay between what I was making with my company and what she was making with the salary. We were stable. So it was kind of like to really get personal. If we increased debt at all, it's because I wanted to grow my business
Hmm.
faster.
Yeah.
I was investing in marketing. I was exhibiting at conferences and doing different things. That was where some of the additional debt came in on the
Right.
business side. Um, but I really wanted to step up as a husband and a father, and bring more to the family. And of course, when I lost my job, I was 41 years old.
Mm,
And during that period, I mean, early in our marriage, we decided that Steph would be a stay-at-home mom, and she did some part-time work here and there, but I kind of carried the majority of our expenses. So we didn't have a lot of savings when that whole ship crashed, right?
right.
And so the other impetus, once then Jessica and Amanda got married, and all the kids are on their own. Now Stephanie and I really had to look at, well, retirement's not too far away unless we're going to be 90 and we're both going to be greeters at Walmart. That was another impetus to really growing the business and working hard, and doing what was necessary.
Yeah, I mean, I love that, and you probably have already answered even my next question. I mean, you have an amazing knack of, like, within your answer have answering my next question. But the whole idea of, like, motivation of like your kind of your internal why, because I mean, I can see that, as you started this and people kept coming to you and say, hey, you ought to do this, you ought to do seminars, you ought to do coaching, you ought to do a program and write a book, that type of thing. But that's, in my mind, that's not enough that other
Yeah.
people just tell you to do that. So what was kind of that last, the impetus that really driver that, or Simon Sinek calls your why?
Well, I got to give credit to God again, because when I did my first event, I was still in the mindset, if I do a great event and people come into my coaching program or join newsletters, do whatever, that's going to be more revenue. But Kevin, something happened. Now I've done 8. I'm about to do my 9th event, but I've done 8 events. Something shifted because doing those events, number one, really expanded my coaching program.
Hmm.
Okay. So I started coaching in 2009. First year was okay, second year better. But I mean, the last 6, 7 years have been really good. Okay. And what I like to tell people, especially people that I help now get into their own coaching program, the paycheck is good. But what really lights me up is when I help somebody double the size of their business, or I
Yeah.
help somebody get their book done and it really explodes. And they say, oh my God, Jim, I have a client right now, as you and I are doing this, has been with me less than 30 days, and he's already almost doubled the investment he's going to make with me over the next year, because I helped him start a coaching program. And that's going to lead to him working less in his retail store.
Hmm.
And again, the paycheck is good. I make a good living being a coach. But when I can impact people's lives in that way, that that makes me not want to stop.
Yeah.
You know
Yeah.
what I mean? So I think in a lot of ways, my biggest why is obviously honoring and pleasing God, but we're really making great progress on our retirement. So we're
Hmm.
not wearing the orange apron when we're both 85 or whatever. But the other thing, which I love what I do. So I don't ever anticipate just turning it off and stopping. What I tell Steph is, maybe when I'm 65 or 66, I'll go down from 30 clients to 10 clients. And maybe when I'm 70, I'll have 3 clients. So I'm always going to do what I'm going to
Sure.
do, because I
Sure.
really believe I will be connected with the right people who need the skill set that I have, that I've been blessed with over
Yep.
the last 20 or 30
Yep.
years.
And that's, there's nothing wasted in God's economy, so I mean, you can look back at even the most difficult times, I mean, have made you a much well-rounded and comprehensive and holistic and rich coach. And I don't mean rich in this financial terms, but albeit that, but rich as in a depth of experience and knowledge, and just being able to bring so much resources to the table when you coach someone.
I like the way you said that. I might have to borrow that in one of my daily quotes, but
You just take
nothing
it
is
away.
wasted. That's a really good expression.
I
When
stole
I,
that from somebody. So
oh,
yeah,
did you?
yeah.
Okay. Well, it's going on down the line. Well, Kevin, early on when I started my coaching program, I got into a mastermind that had some other coaches in it that were so far ahead of me. I was like, oh my gosh, look at these people. But, you know, I didn't want to be in a mastermind. I didn't want to necessarily be in a mastermind with people who were struggling, right? I mean, that's no math. So I wanted to be in a mastermind with people who are doing really well. And I call this, I'll share a little thing with you if we have time. I call it my greatest embarrassment as an entrepreneur. It was like the most, so I'm in this mastermind. I flew out to California. I was living in Pennsylvania at the time. And the only saving grace was it wasn't in front of everybody. It was kind of on a break. Well, this gentleman who I just held in very high regard, he had like a $2 million coaching program, which to me is like, oh, and he took me aside and he goes, Jim, I know what you want to do. I know you want to have a coaching program like I do or somebody else. He says, I'm aware of what you're doing, marketing and all the different ways you're growing. But he said, Jim, I'm also aware of what you're not doing. And I have a question for you. And I thought he's going to dispense some amazing advice, which he did. But I thought it was going to be a little more kind or helpful. And he said, what makes you think that you're entitled to achieve the same level of success as me or somebody else in the room, yet I don't see you willing to do the things that we've done to build our business? What makes you think you're going to get there when you're not willing to step up and kind of do the hard things? And it was a really, I don't know about you, Kevin, when I get embarrassed, I turn red. My ears could probably melt glaciers, right? And I was horribly embarrassed, but I remember flying home and thinking, never again am I going to be put in that spot, because essentially what this person did was call me a wuss,
Mm,
because that was pre me speaking. It was pre me doing my own live events, because I was definitely, oh my God, not only how can I teach for 3 days, it's a $25,000 investment before you sell your first ticket. And what if you don't sell anything?
yeah.
It's a big deal to put on your own seminar.
Hmm.
So I had all these things that I didn't necessarily want to do, but in my mind, I was bound and determined to become successful, but I was going to go around all the things most people do. And he called me out on it. So again, I learned how to be a speaker. I started doing my own live events. I wrote multiple books. I started doing many interviews like this. I mean, you're probably my 350th interview in the last 3 or 4 years. So I started doing everything that all the successful people were doing. There's a very big clue there.
Yeah.
Success leaves tracks, as they
Yep.
say. And guess what? I started growing. So that was a pretty big turning point for me when somebody kind of called me out.
Well, I love the fact that the way you frame that is you can do two things. When something like that happens, you can either be embarrassed, stick your tail between your legs and hit the road, and or even be critical of the person that gave you that, kind of that dressing down, as they would say. Or you
Yes.
can say, you know what, take that on as critique instead of criticism, and say, how do I grow from this? How do
And part
what's
of
the
that
truth there?
was for me to make an investment to be in that group, including paying for the travel, everything. I made a commitment to myself every time I did that. If I'm going to make this investment, which means I'm going to either shortchange the money that I bring home to the family, or I'm going to perhaps borrow some business funds to pay for it in some way, shape, or form, everything's an investment.
Yep.
And I rationalized with myself, or I made a deal with myself, Kevin, that said, if I'm going to do this and they tell me to jump, I'm going to say how high. If they tell me to go right, I'm going to say, well, don't you think it's easier to go left? And so I sort of had that commitment with
Sure.
myself.
Yeah.
And, I kind of stayed true to myself. So in that regard, I think that was a good thing.
I mean, I think that's a healthy posture, to take, as a learner, as a lifetime learner, is to,
Yes.
especially when people are further down the road than you are. So speaking of being further down the road, I would really love to just kind of step out of the way and give you a little space here, I want you to speak directly to our audience and say, okay, the big question on the table is, if you were going to do this again tomorrow, if you were going to start something tomorrow, Walk us through kind of the 2 or 3 just foundational steps that you need to take. And I'm kind of curious what you would do. I mean, I want to default. You would just be a coach, but if I don't want to answer this for you. You tell us what you would do.
Well, I'm going to start by giving you 3 great book titles. They happen to be mine, but they're good titles, and I'll just riff from there if that's
Sure.
okay.
Yeah.
So one of my books, I think it was book number 5, was Stop Waiting for It to Get Easier, right? And people are waiting for the stars to align for everything. They're waiting to be able to answer every what if question, like what if it doesn't work? What if I make this investment? What if I start this business and it goes wrong? Stop waiting for it to get easier. Start right now where you are and start moving forward. The next thing is, and this isn't a book title, but stop swimming in the shallow end of the pool. All the big growth happens when you step way outside your comfort zone, which is usually in the deep end of the pool. As far as things that hold people back that I wish I didn't do in the early days, number 1, perfectionism and giving a damn what other people think about what you do and how you're doing it. So I learned a very important lesson in my early days as a newsletter marketer from Dan Kennedy. I became the newsletter guru. Seems like a silly title. I know my neighbor at the time, who was a chemist, always laughed. Oh, the newsletter guru. We see our son on our tractors and we got our lawn, and that's okay, because my neighbor was not my customer. But when I became the newsletter guru and started marketing myself in a very out there way, in a kind of flamboyant, but like I'm doing now with video and stuff, I started growing. And I became far less concerned about the opinion of other people, especially those that weren't my customers, right? 2 more things I'll give you, and I can give you more if you want to keep going, but 2 more things. Number 1, be willing to do massive action simultaneously, not sequentially. Most people, they go to first grade, second grade, third grade, all the way up. But you don't have to climb the ladder of success 1 rung at a time. You can climb multiple rungs. You can leapfrog, right? Nobody says you have to earn your first 6 figures before you get to 200,000. I mean, if you're doing 80,000, why not? Don't stop at 600,000. Let's build 150,000 or $250,000 business, right? So you can leapfrog, and sometimes that requires you to do things, what I call massive action, operating on multiple fronts, but and doing it simultaneously, not sequentially. That was one of the big things early on in our conversation, Kevin. I told you about a new client, been with me 30 days. In 30 days, we launched a new coaching program. He was so far out of his comfort zone that literally the night, which was just this past Tuesday, as you and I are talking, he was getting ready to launch, and we hadn't created the link where people were going to sign up. He wasn't 100% sure of the price. We were throwing everything out there, and he's got a very high 5-figure coaching program now because he was willing to. Again, I'm going to refer to Dan Kennedy. Dan Kennedy says success leaves a messy kitchen. He was okay flying out there or jumping and learning how to fly. The last thing I'll say to you, and this is specifically for, I guess, entrepreneurs, you will earn a significantly higher income for who you are, not what you do. You'll earn a significantly higher income, not for who you are, more for who you are than what you do. So it's not about the deliverable. It's always going to be about who you are. And this really speaks to the whole celebrity culture that we live in. When I had cancer, I didn't necessarily say, well, what doctor, what surgeon's available and when is he running a special? It's
Yes.
like, who is the best surgeon that handles melanoma? And that's where I went. Stephanie, one point a few years ago, got a spiral fracture slipping on the ice. We didn't go, look for a 2-for-1 special. We were recommended to the guy who specialized, an orthopedic surgeon who specialized in spiral fractures. That's where we went. If you want to work with a business coach and you want to have a 6-figure or multiple 6-figure business, or you want to have multiple businesses, don't hire somebody with a flashy website who's read a lot of books and can regurgitate somebody else's information. For heaven's sakes, go work with somebody who's actually done what it is that you want to do.
Sure.
And do what they say.
Yep.
And if part of that, to come back to you'll learn significantly more. If part of that is becoming an author and giving yourself a brand and a handle. See, there's so many business coaches. So I was the newsletter guru for, a good 8-10 years. Then I became the dream business coach. Because if you want to have a business, why not have a dream business that helps make you, it makes it possible to live your dream lifestyle. So that became my whole brand.
Yeah.
I'm not just Jim Palmer, the small business coach. I'm the dream business coach.
Exactly.
So sometimes it requires you to step up on that platform and say, this is who I am. And people will be attracted to that.
Mm-hmm. So if you're going to do it tomorrow, what would you do?
I would do everything I did in the last almost 20 years, but I would speed it the hell up because
20
again,
days or 20
I
months.
know. And you know what, there's an expression, and I say it all the time, regret tastes like crap.
Mm,
So to the best of my ability, I don't want to have regrets moving forward. Of course, every day, we probably have something we regret thinking or doing.
yeah.
But when I look back on how many years, especially in my first business and then getting going, and I really played smaller ball than I was capable of. I know that because I'm playing bigger ball now, if that makes
Right.
sense.
Sure.
So if I was to start over, it's kind of like, what would you say to your 18-year-old self? Geez, I wish I had more confidence. I should have just asked more girls out. I don't know. There's but you can't go back.
Yeah.
But I'll tell you the things that the differences between the top 1% or even the top 10% in any niche industry or even the country, these people are willing to do something that these people, big group,
Yes,
are
sir.
not willing to do, Kevin, right?
You're exactly right.
There's I know we're getting short on time, but when I talk to certain entrepreneurs and they want to have big growth, and some people say, yeah, but I really want to have a business where I have work-life balance. That's a big thing. And I totally get that. But one of the things I'll say, well, let me tell you something about being an entrepreneur and going after significant growth. Let's say it's Thursday, it's 5 o'clock, you've made a commitment, you're going to leave at 5 o'clock every day, no matter what, you're going to go check into Little League or dance recital or whatever. And you've been trying to get this big client. You've been working on this client for months and months and months. He's out of town. Your phone rings, it's 4:58, and this prospective client that is a game changer. If you land this client, it's going to change your business. And he says, hey, it's Jim, it's Brad. I'm just calling. I didn't call you earlier because I actually flew into town. I had a meeting and I was going to fly right out, but they just canceled my flight. I have to stay overnight. I know you've been after me. You want to talk to me about what you can do and how you can help me. Do you want to have dinner and tell me what you can do for me? What are you going to do in that? Oh, I'm sorry, Brad. I'm going to go to Little League. Now, some people may do that. And whatever you decide, whatever your priorities, that's fine with me. But what I'm saying is if you're seeking fast, massive growth in business, you're going to have to make some tough choices as a small business owner.
Yep.
And again, whatever way you go is okay because that's your decision. But I'm telling you, the perfect balance and the perfect business does not exist.
Yeah, sure. I kind of love the way you frame that, and I mean, you had a little bit of a moral argument, moral predicament that you faced there, but I mean, it could be just as easily be, watch a Netflix show versus, do the hard thing, that
That's
type
right.
of thing. So, what are your priorities? Just kind of the way you frame that. I really appreciate that, but. Yeah, as we wrap up, I really appreciate you kind of laying the groundwork for our Rising Tide Startup School segment that we do. Just kind of give people another opportunity to as they're thinking through, trying to get something started. And I love the foundational steps that you laid. But
and I love the whole strategy of your podcast because we live in a time right now, and I'm not getting political, but the economy is on fire. There's more opportunity in this country. I don't know if people are listening internationally, but there is more opportunity to start a business. And, so many people, and this is what I kind of, where I think this education system can do better. I'll leave it at that. But for goodness sakes, there's something besides an education, a resume, and getting a job working for somebody else. There's such a thing as entrepreneurship.
Yep.
And so many people don't even know that exists until later in life. I mean, we're in this boat and we're in marinas all the time. There are people that just wax boats for a living. I know a guy that he works basically 7 or 8 months really hard. This is when we're up north, and he has like 3 or 4 months off doing nothing, but he makes a really nice living. There's so many things you could do to create a business for yourself and really control your destiny, so to speak.
Mm-hmm.
So there's a lot of opportunity, and I think a lot of people just sit on the sidelines and wonder what if. And it's one of the reasons Stephanie and I moved on this boat before we quote unquote retired, because, well, what if we wait another 5 years and God forbid I get cancer again or something else happens or our health goes and we're not able to do it? we didn't want to live with the regret of not having this amazing experience. So we found a way to make it work. We lost 2 chairs in this boat because my desk is right here because I still work. But we found a way to make this happen. And we're having this amazing adventure while I'm still working. And so I'll leave you with the title of my 7th book, which is Just Say Yes. You won't know what you're capable of doing, whether it's in business or in life or some kind of adventure, unless and until you're willing to just say yes and go see what you can do.
I love the way you kind of wrapped us up today, and I mean
It's not
it's
my
been a
first
great
interview,
journey.
Kevin, right?
Yeah, no doubt about it. I could have just said take off and I'll meet you in 30 minutes, but
There you go.
yeah, I mean, I really appreciate you taking the time tonight. And if one of our listeners is looking for your services, looking for a coach, I mean, what's the best way to find out more about Jim Palmer and maybe to get in contact with you?
Well, my home base is getjimpalmer.com. Jimpalmer.com is either for the baseball player or it's for sale. Somebody
Yeah,
told me it's
you
for
were a
sale.
great
It's like
pitcher for the Orioles at one time. Yeah,
$15,000.
that's right.
So it's getjimpalmer.com. That's my home base. From there, there's links to my books, my courses. There's a link to my coaching program and my live events. If anybody's curious, purely away from business on a personal side, Stephanie and I started a YouTube channel, and I think we've got like 15 or 18 videos up. We travel up and down the East Coast.
Yep.
If you're curious about the boat and how we do that, if you go to YouTube, the name of our boat is Floating Home. So our YouTube channel is Our Floating Home, OUR Floating Home. So just go to YouTube, put in Our Floating Home, you'll see us, and it's hopefully some fun entertainment. But if you're curious about how we do this, that would be another place to go.
Well, I will certainly make sure that those are in the show notes, and it's just been once again a pleasure just talking to you tonight, and just picking your brain a little bit. And I can just see that just the depth of knowledge and experience that you bring to the table, and you're
Well,
a
I'm glad we
veritable
connected,
library.
and
So
we connected through my daughter, which was
absolutely, yeah,
pretty interesting.
yeah, tell Jessica thank you for
I
making
will
that
do that.
connection. But Jim, just thanks again for really just playing your part and just helping all boats rise in a rising tide. Have a great evening.
All right, you too. Thanks for having me on, Kevin.